Y'all, it's been a hot minute since I logged any sort of time as a Division agent in the games that I literally began my YouTube channel with, and from where it kind of all began with me. Call it ground zero for my YouTube career. But, you know, after 4,000 plus hours across both games, 600 plus Division videos up on YouTube and other outside events I attended, I just needed to step away from the franchise. Partially due to fatigue, but also just me wanting to try out different things and spread my wings a little bit, and hopefully you know what I mean. So it was an interesting day when just recently, out of the blue, Ubisoft reached out with a proposition offering to sponsor this video while bringing me and my Division experience back to check out their latest expansion to the game, the Battle for Brooklyn. But before we really hop into this thing, it's time to be brutally honest, and I did want to say that I made doubly sure before I accepted the sponsorship that I would be given carte blanche to say it like I saw it. No restrictions, just the content speaking for itself along with my honest thoughts, both positive and negative, and that's what I wanted, and that's what they agreed to. Okay, with that all out of the way, I wanted to say that I've now rolled credits on the campaign and side missions for the DLC, which took me running solo about 4 to 5 hours time, excluding all the open world collectibles and points of interest. I've seen Brooklyn pretty much in its entirety. I've visited some of the old iconic landmarks and locations from the original Division game, and of course, I've got feedback on much of what I saw. So overall, if that sounds good to you, let's dive into the Division 2's second expansion, Battle for Brooklyn. Yeah, there it is, the OG transition from my original Division videos. How about a thumbs up for that thing? Because I knew if I didn't dust it off and bring it back for my return here with this Division video, I was going to get questioned about it, but that one's for you. Anyways, first up, we need to talk about performance with this new DLC. And let's be honest here, it's a crapshoot these days what sort of issues you're going to see on PC with a day one launch. And to be fair, we've seen it also hit close to home as the Division 2 has seen more than its fair share of chain crashing and performance issues. But I think it's important to say that in my time with this new Brooklyn DLC, I saw none of that. So it was a strong start from launch. I also played the entire thing on PC and 4K on a 4090 GPU with maxed out settings across the board. I mean, you name it. If there was a slider for it, it was pegged out at full. And with pretty much all of this footage, I purposely left the FPS counter active at the top right hand of the screen. And again, it stayed pegged at 60 FPS because I cap it at that for recording reasons. But again, no stutters, no real optimization issues of note, just solid frames with zero issues. Now, as you dive into Battle for Brooklyn, you are once again a Shade agent tasked with rooting out potential disasters buried deep in the remaining infrastructure of Brooklyn. The Cleaners, my hands-down favorite faction in the entire franchise, are back, and of course up to their old tricks of set it on fire first, ask questions later. By the way, I'm also going to keep this review spoiler-free for everyone out there that hasn't had a chance to play or is waiting for a review, kind of like this one, before making the decision to pull the trigger on the purchase. But I did want to let you know that included in the DLC, there's a series of 4 new world missions and 3 off-site main missions that see you systematically eliminate your foes and the potential threats to Brooklyn. Theo Parnell returns from the Warlords of New York expansion to assist you along the way, along with a small cast of new agents and villains with a few plot twists along the way. Now, as with the rest of the franchise, dating all the way back to its launch in 2016, you really get the flavor for what's been going down here in Brooklyn when you find those character comms and echoes you find throughout the playable area. Progressing through the story will unlock a new skill for you as Smart Cover makes a return from the original game, buffing you and your squad mates once deployed and of course while attached to cover. Now, for those of us who used the skill back in the OG game, the deployment method now uses a launcher and AoE halo versus the old way of first attaching to cover and then sticking Smart Cover directly to that cover, but in the end, the results are much the same. There's also a new seasonal track that is launched alongside this new DLC called Crossroads that, again, runs in parallel to the new content, and it's available to owners of the base game, so you can unlock the base seasonal pass items while also playing through the new missions. And we also see the return of a new set of journey missions, which can now be unlocked in unison instead of the prior implementation where you could only concentrate on one at a time. Now, personally, I'm not a big fan of these things. They're just checklists to me. But you've got all sorts of things here like complete 3 resource convoys, deal 50 critical hits, all the way up to the more extreme items such as use armor repair skills 50 times. And once you've unlocked enough of these items per journey rank, they unlock a ton of resources and priority objective XP. Back and also slightly modified are the Scouts targets, again spread over 11 weeks, but with this time we see a new wrinkle to this mechanic. There are 2 priority objectives to hunt down and eliminate. There's more baked in here as well, like new hunter masks to track down and acquire in Brooklyn, along with new gear, exotics, named items, which fall in line with what a returning player is used to with the Division. Speaking of which, if you are a returning player, so that means you own the base game, you can pick up the DLC for $15. And for all you new players out there, there's also an ongoing free weekend up through June the 2nd, where you can kind of get your feet wet, plus any progress you make during the free trial carries over to the live game should you decide to pull the trigger on the purchase, where I believe the base game is currently 90% off. And in case you are wondering, you don't need any experience with the Division 2 at all. I mean, none required, as the onboarding mechanics themselves allow you to dive into the new content leveled up to match your enemies. But you do need to own the base game in order to purchase and access the DLC, because I know I was about to receive more than a few questions from viewers out there asking me outright, do I first need to own the base game before purchasing the DLC? That answer is yes. All right, let's get down to the brass tacks of what worked for me here and what did not. Starting off with Brooklyn itself. I know it's an odd first topic, but hear me out. Now, I kept waiting for it, and I kept waiting for it, and this never, ever happened. Now, to me, the obvious guaranteed 100% W, the massive victory here would have been snow. Lots and lots of snow. Now, we never saw it during the Battle for Brooklyn trailers, but I kept telling myself there's no way Brooklyn isn't currently under a foot of snow right now. They're just holding it back as a surprise, especially considering how long we've been down in DC. Division 2 seems to have some internal red line where they do not want to cross it and bring back beloved pieces of the original game, like for instance the survival game mode. We're just now, 6 years after launch, starting to get more pieces that harken back to the past, like those famous single strap backpacks, the Alpha Bridge gear set, and of course smart cover. But yeah, for me, snow crunching underneath our agent's feet as we made our way up to the bridge settlement minute 1 when we touched down in Brooklyn would have been incredible, especially if during that moment we touched down we had like a Rick Velassi pirate radio broadcast blaring on some distant radio. Sticking with Brooklyn and the map itself, and there's also this facet to the map that felt like a thorn in the back of my brain, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it until I finally landed on the answer. Brooklyn has received the Wony treatment, which I'm going to be honest, is not a bad thing, but as someone that spent a few hundred hours in the original game's version of Brooklyn, it throws you a curveball. You see, Wony, like the Division 2 in general, has this overly saturated color palette, which is quite different than the original game. There's also this change in perspective, distances, and density. The original Brooklyn was a little more spread out, it felt a little taller, and the end result was that it made you feel like you were very small in a big, cold world. This new version of Brooklyn doesn't give you that same feeling because it instead makes you feel a bit claustrophobic. There's a density of terrain and encounters here that we did not see in the original vision they had of Brooklyn. And along with the overly saturated Wony color palette, it's just off, or at least it feels that way to me. I know, small and probably petty observation I'm making, and I can agree to that, but if you are an original Division agent, try out the old Brooklyn and then immediately drop into this new version and let me know if you're seeing the same thing I am. Combat in general also feels identical to what we see in the base game. I mean, handling and damage models haven't changed here, although I was seeing occasional wonky hitboxes and being damaged through cover, especially from those cleaner flamethrowers and those damn rockets, because they seem to have these rocket sentries everywhere, where you would be standing behind cover trying to get in a reload thinking you were fully protected, and just whammo, here comes a rocket through the solid wall you were standing behind, or the rocket hits behind you or next to you, and the splash damage is so damn great it's an insta-kill. There's also a huge break in between challenge and heroic difficulty, which still persists here in Battle for Brooklyn, where everything feels like it gets 10 times stronger as soon as you toggle up to heroic. And I also did want to highlight boss encounter mechanics. Now, again, no spoilers here, I promise. But in the past, bosses in the original game, and then once the Division 2 launched, were walking meat shields with no special mechanics to learn and or deal with. Battle for Brooklyn mirrors some of the newer content to the Division 2 in that bosses started to have phases and semi-different attack patterns. It's on full display here in the new DLC, and you'll need to learn these in order to beat the enemies and complete these main missions. However, I would like to point out that despite these bosses having these new special protections and attacks, their base behaviors really haven't changed that much, as they basically walk up to your position and try to face tank you. I kept seeing it from one encounter to another, where I would reach the final boss and the climax of that mission. These bosses would come bursting onto the scene, and I'd slowly have to kite them around, chipping away at their armor and health pools, while their damage was absolutely lethal if encountered for more than just a split second. So again, points here for the new mechanics and having the challenge to deal with these new phases and equipment, but for Division 3, there needs to be tweaks made overall to this AI behavior, because walking up to your position and basically pushing you as a player from spot to spot is simply not enough, especially in 2025. Two final items worthy of mention is the total absence of anything to do with a PvP update as part of this DLC, which, has been an ongoing struggle overall with the Division 2. Now, back in the day, you would grind out the best builds and gear to then go into that massive dark zone and put all of it to the ultimate test, taking on the game's end game. Division 2's PvP hasn't seen that same sort of connection with the player base, and I don't want to pour salt on old wounds, but with this new expansion, PvP is once again an afterthought. And finally, in stark contrast to the world building and environments, which in general I thought were spot on and excellent, I found the writing and narrative direction of this new DLC to be bland. These conversations start, they stop, there's not much carryover, and there's a general lack of nuance here. Now, I talked with other experienced Division players to ask their opinions on the narrative, and they were telling me that cutscenes and narrative items were skipped prompts after about 30 minutes with the new DLC. Now, I realize this is highly subjective, and in general, I love Division lore, and I find the story fascinating, but I just didn't connect with the narrative portion of this DLC. It's serviceable, but not much past that.
Ow! You're fine. It's not broken. You don't even need a bandage.
So I've tried to lay out a lot of points in this review. I've pointed out some positives, I've pointed out some negatives, but now it's time for that all-important final verdict. Is Battle for Brooklyn worth your time and that $15 purchase price? Which I believe it is, despite some of its shortcomings and a few questionable design choices. Now, we haven't seen actual DLC for the Division 2 since March the 3rd, 2020, which is a story unto itself, but there's overall enough going on here to warrant that price, especially when compared to other DLC releases and just how little you get for those at sometimes twice to 3 times this price. Just be careful when you go into that online store, as it's been a while since I ventured in there, but the amount of cosmetics and bundles all hitting you in the face is mind-blowingly crazy. I realize these are all optional, of course, and in my humble opinion, there's overall enough cosmetics here to be had in the standard seasonal tracks, but that store is overwhelming in its offerings, and let's just leave it at that. I will say this though, being able to jump in right now with no Division experience, no need for gear, min-max builds and or weapons is a real bonus, and the search for collectibles will keep you busy far past the point when the content runs out. The new missions and boss mechanics offer up a little something different here, and for those agents out there with prior experience that have maybe taken a hiatus from the game, like me, I would end with this. If you like The Division 2, you're going to like Battle for Brooklyn. Now, if they would just add some damn snow to this entire map and create a survival mode along with some sort of last stand arena here in Brooklyn, we are talking a huge W worthy of this hallowed ground. If you happen to have any questions or comments, please leave them down below in the comment section and I'll do my best to respond. Thanks again to Ubisoft for sponsoring this video. Remember to hit subscribe and to ring the notifications bell to receive my future upload alerts. I did want to mention I've graciously received a code, which you can find down in the video description and pinned comments, granting you access to some free in-game swag, like 2 exotic caches and both a standard and specialized materials pack. If you're interested in picking up the base game and or DLC, check down there as well for links. And by the way, those links are there just for your convenience. Nothing more. I think you know what I'm saying. And until the next one, this is LtBuzzLitebeer, signing off.